So ABC, after one of its affiliates decided to take Jimmy Kimmel off its channels, uh, kowtowed to the fascists and the white supremacists and decided to kick Jimmy Kimmel off their network. They canceled him. It says indefinite. It's probably permanent. That's just how it goes. Now, let's go back a few days, a week, to when this first happened. Uh, Charlie Kirk gets assassinated in broad daylight, right? And every Democratic politician, every Democratic figure, every liberal and progressive figure comes out and says, this is a tragedy. This is further evidence that gun violence is horrific in this country. That we need to actually do something about it to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. The right, MAGA, so that is this administration, that is Ben Shapiro, that is all of these alt-right people just like Charlie Kirk, as well as local politicians, state politicians, federal politicians, anybody who can take the opportunity to cash in on Charlie Kirk's untimely demise. All of them, all of a sudden, they're ready to start a civil war. They're tweeting out about it. They're going on news and talking about it. They're saying some of the most insane things that typically is only reserved for the Charlie Kirks of the world. You might hear this kind of stuff come out of a Tim Pool or a Kirk or, anybody on that, like in that, alt-right bubble that exists online. You don't typically hear about this kind of thing from city and state legislatures. Now, sometimes you hear about it from federal congressmen, but that's because generally Republicans in the federal government are all blowhards who they spend their entire life just trying to cash in on tragedy. But so this is what happens. They start talking about how it's a leftist. It must have been a leftist. It must have been a progressive and Antifa and any other, special word or phrase that they can, any kind of special descriptor that they can throw at the at that point, unknown assailant. They make all these wild claims about this person. And then Kash Patel, our esteemed head of the FBI, manages to not once but twice screw up the public discourse around the assassin by talking about how they had, captured or they were interrogating who they believed to be the killer, and then it turns out, no, they were just completely wrong, and they shouldn't have said a single word about it, and yet they did. Okay, so day one reactions are unhinged and insane, right? Now, fast forward a couple days. Turns out that this guy, not so much a leftist. Turns out he's probably a Nick Fuentes viewer, who, if you don't know, is one of the most extreme, I would say actually one of the most popular white supremacists out there. He truly believes that America should be for whites only. And I'm not just saying this. I invite you not to look at his quotes and, what he's discussed in the past to potentially fall down that rabbit hole. Just to gaze into the pit of vileness that is Nick Fuentes. So, white supremacist kills a white supremacist. I mean, it's happened before. If you look at the two people accused of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump last year, both had pretty crazy alt-right views, or at least search histories, etc. Okay. So, they go from talking about how there should be a civil war, about how they're going to essentially round up the leftists and how things need to be done to and about leftists, very clearly indicating that they would be more than glad to put anybody progressive in a concentration camp or just straight up kill them. They made that very clear on the first 1 to 2 to 3 days. And you can go look up their Twitter histories. Maybe they've deleted some of the comments, but trust me, that was the online discourse coming from the alt-right, which, in fairness now, is just all of the right. It's just MAGA. MAGA encompasses all of it. They're all extremists. Then, some people on the left, including myself, by the way, not that I'm some sort of, big figure or anything, just in these videos, they start to say, well, hey, this person was actually a right-winger who killed him. Or they say, we can say that it's bad to kill people and also say that let's not forget that Charlie Kirk was a horrific white supremacist, that he was an anti-Semite, that he was just a horrible, horrible person and had horrible, horrible views, regardless of the fact that he had a family. Because guess what? Almost every fascist and white supremacist and murderer and serial killer in history had a family. And in fact, if you discount solely spouses and children, they all had family. They all had mothers and fathers. They're all, so it applies to all of them. That doesn't make you a good person because you have relatives. And it doesn't make you a good person because you have a spouse. Because your spouse could be awful. Your spouse could have fallen for a white supremacist, like in Charlie Kirk's case. So, some people say things like, hey, you know what? He was a horrible, horrible person. Let's not forget that. I'm not going to go out of my way to mourn a white supremacist. I'm just not going to do it. And this is the response. The response is Jimmy Kimmel gets sacked. The response is all kinds of firings across the country by people who I'm sure if you ask them would say they're not white supremacists. But rather than do any due diligence, or rather than stand up for their employees or their whoever, rather than stand up against the white supremacists and the fascists and the people who hate free speech, which is all of MAGA, they kowtow to them. They bow down, they bend over. Now, some of these companies are just straight up run by those people, in which case, they'll do whatever, and you have to expect that a company run by a white supremacist is going to do this stuff. But let's be very clear here. Not every company that is firing people for saying something like Charlie Kirk was a bad person, not all of them are white supremacists, at least not outwardly, but they're either ignorant and they have no interest in not being ignorant, and they think that Charlie Kirk was just some, Republican commentator, despite all of the evidence and every single quote out there that's been floated since his death being just truly horrific. They're still willing to just bend over, to just do what they're told by their fascist overlords. So we cannot rely on the media, of course, because they have done nothing to actually paint an accurate picture of who Charlie Kirk was. At least not mainstream media. Fox News, by the way, is talking about committing genocide against homeless people and the mentally ill. And yet, no firings. Ryan Kilmeade still has a job, yet Jimmy Kimmel gets his show canceled. So let's be very clear. MAGA hates free speech, right? MAGA hates free speech. That's a fact. They love censorship. They love censorship. The right loves censorship across the entire planet. They hate the fact that human beings can disagree with each other, and they hate the fact that particularly people of other races and genders can disagree with them. So that's number one. Number two, anybody who does disagree with them deserves to be fired. But let's be clear, it's not just people who disagree with them, it's people who point out facts. If I say Charlie Kirk talked about brown and black people by calling them cockroaches and saying that they need to be taken care of, that is a fact. He said those things. So that doesn't make me hateful, that doesn't make me whatever. He was just a disgusting, vile human being. And yet, if you say anything remotely close to that, even if you just say, I'm not going to mourn for him, these psychopaths online want consequences for you. They want to strip your freedom of speech. Let's be very clear. Liberty is not given, it's taken. These people will never give you liberty. Nobody in this administration will give you liberty. They will not give you your rights. They will not give you your freedoms. We have to take them. If we want to still have the freedom of speech, if we still want to, not be beholden to these psychos at the FCC or whatever, then we have to take those rights by whatever means is necessary. There are always big protests. Certainly check your local chapters of, your Democratic committee, as well as anything you can find that's a protest. Organize them yourself. Either way, we have to do what we can, because we cannot be taken advantage of. We cannot be lied to, because guess what? The corporations and the media and our politicians have made it clear that they're not going to help us.